We've gone through the basics of using something like an SSL compressor now, so that we've got the full band working, and that's for the gluing. Now with multiband, what we're doing is getting into compressing in sections. Now my favourite and something that I go to a lot is the FabFilter Pro MB. As you can see, we can see here actually that there's quite a bit of noise coming off of. So going back to the colours, if we take that ATR off, then you can see that, yeah, that's what that's adding. They've sampled that well. But going back to the MB, so the thing I like about this is, unlike a dynamic EQ, this is where I can use the attack and release times in certain areas. So I really like that, because it means I can really dig deep into certain sounds and things that are happening. So I particularly use this mainly for super highs and super lows. So the majority of times, just so that let's get into this quickly, there is a setting on here, mastering tighter lows. Now that gets us straight into just dealing with the lower band. Now when I'll use this is mainly on dance music, whether that's electronic music or hip hop, where I've got a lot of sub bass going on that's quite unruly, and most people have trouble with that in their home studios because they can't actually hear what's going on under, say, 50 hertz. So usually when it comes to mastering and I can hear what's going on, that is really going to affect what's happening to the higher bands when I'm compressing, if you've got a lot going on in the low end. Because if you haven't got a side chain on your main compressors, it's going to be dictated to by what's happening in the subs and the low end. So here is a really great way of getting that really under control. I'll go into that in the next stage of the course, but just briefly so that you understand how I'm getting hold of the low end with this. If we start off with that, because it sets up the ratios and everything, and I will always try and pull this down to the lowest settings. I want to deal with it around 60 hertz and anything below that. Now, the reason why is because although that's the crossover point, it is still doing work around this kind of anything under 100 and just over 100. So in that area, we've got bass guitars, we've got kicks happening. There's quite a lot going on here. But really what I want to deal with is holding the sub and holding the kicks nice and tight in the low end. So this setting here, it's on +3 as a default when it comes to that. I tend to not use it that high. That's adding quite a lot to the low end. So it's track dependent, obviously, to how much you want to add. But if we start off with it at 0, and then the range I'll bring down quite far for people, it's like -6. If I put this to 6, so we can see what's happening. And then what will happen is this will bounce around and move down. So then I can adjust the threshold to see how much of this I'm moving. And I don't really want to have it moving too much because I don't want it to suck the bass, but I just want it to grab hold of the bass and just sort of tighten up that low end. And it really gives a really nice sharp kick. I'll use the release, very fast. And I'll work on the attacks, probably starting around here, just to let most of the subs through, but then just making them a really fast release. So I'm grabbing hold of them and then releasing them quickly. So what that's doing is giving a really fast bass sound in the subs. And then what I'm also able to do here is, as I've said previously, with using stereo width and monoing and things like that, I will mono here, because I know that I'm monoing just under around 50 hertz and all this section on this lovely slope here. So as that's going down, as that's hitting, I can then mono what's going on in that area. So it means that when it's coming out of this compressor, it's going to be nice and tight and monoed going into other stuff. So when I'm EQing, I can EQ into this, then tighten it up and then come out the other end. So it's quite good for pushing a bit of level in and then coming out tighter into other stuff. Now, the ratio is 4:1, which is a good ratio, again, similar to what I showed you on the SSL. And that gives a kind of really fast, tight bass sound. So that's how I'm using it in the low end. I will move this up and down, and I also will keep my finger on the cursor. I've found that a 16 dB slope is really nice. That's really smooth. The reason I say that is because that's the exact slope that Leif Masses told me, who makes Maselec equipment, if you've come across that in mastering. So he said that slope is what he uses on his multiband. So using it on here, I found it gives a similar effect. It gets the low end really tight. His actually start at 100 hertz, so he's doing it a lot higher up. I actually prefer it a lot lower down because it means that I can keep this more stereo and just not have to hold the actual bass guitar notes and stuff too hard. I just want to hold that sub stuff and really grab hold of that to give it a real strong big foundation, because I may pump into it a bit and pull that up if I need some more subs, just so that I can get some real heavy low end going but keep it really under control. So that's kind of what I'm doing there. Now in the top end on here, again, similar thing. I'm going to use this mainly as a de-esser. So I'm going to use it on a fast release time, let things come through, use my ears, check the threshold so I can hear what's going on. You can solo here, so you can hear exactly what you're clipping and what you're taking. I would say if I'm de-essing, I always take it about 5, and again I'll bring the ratio down so that it's a lot smoother. Again, with everything I'm doing in mastering, I'm trying to keep everything nice and smooth, nothing too tight, nothing too abrupt, so that it's it's a very smooth, clear picture, and I'm just getting some real juice out of it. So keep those curves nice and smooth, and use it around sort of 5-ish, which means you're still going to get a bit more, but you're not going to take too much away from the snares and the stuff that's happening around the 2K area, where you want that. The snare's so important when you're mastering. You want that so tight, because it's the kick and the snare that are really moving a track. So you don't really want to be taking too much edge out of the snare. You want to be adding it, more than anything, as you would like that with an expander. You'd rather be doing that, but I would rather do that with a dynamic EQ than with this. In this, I'm de-essing, and then I can add a little bit of top, and I can de-ess. I'm more likely, if I'm adding top, again, to do it in a dynamic EQ, because I want it to move around, and I might want it just to move in the sides rather than in the center, or I might just want it in the center only. So that's really a dynamic EQ thing I would do if I was lifting up the level in here. But I'm more likely just to use it as a de-esser, so it's really fast, and it can happen at this stage of the mastering chain. So that I'm compressing the bass and I'm controlling. So I'm really using this as a controller. It's just to kind of keep the top and the bottom together, because I'm going to be adding some EQ later after this to open it up again. But at least I've taken away some of that sort of edge. Now, I usually have the oversampling on +4 because I think it sounds good. And I usually have this on linear phase, but really that's down to your ear, and it's down to the track that you're using, obviously, because things are going to sound different in different modes. So really, again, just use your ears. There's no set rules for these particular features. You've just got to go, does that work for this track or does it not? And then make that decision and move on.